One second. Shall we start? For those who know me, I'm kind of a menu snob. I care about menus and I'm going to talk about it. Shut the fuck up, you Hurensöhne! If you want to skip it, there are timestamps. Spacelords menus look nice. They give me this futuristic computer terminal vibe that fits within the story, since cutscenes show characters having their briefings in a room with a similar setup. The only problem here is that the menu always opens directly into the construction menu and shop, which is a little bit intrusive. If the player wants to go to those parts, they should have the choice, but please don't shove it in their faces. It is probably done this way because it does drive more sales if the shop is shoved down the player's throat, but I don't like it, and I don't think many people do. For some reason, there's also a notification bubble leading you to missions every single day, even after the playing for hundreds of times. I wouldn't care much if I could change those things in the settings. Unfortunately, you can't. But the settings themselves are actually pretty good. The only thing missing is an apply or confirm button, which feels weird. Otherwise, everything is great. Wow. I'm kind of disgusted at myself for not having anything bad to say about the menus. So, let's move on with the characters. There are 19 characters in total, and they can be categorized in 4 different groups: Locals, Hades Division, Umbra War Dogs, and Fifth Council. The Locals are the native raiders of the Broken Planet. Most of the Locals are snipers, they start running faster, and they have a smaller health pool. Hades Division has higher base health and no special features. Umbra War Dogs are constantly regenerating health, and their stress is almost always on. The Fifth Council receives less damage and is less affected by something like push. Their stress grows faster and they are slower. As you might have noticed, every single character is extremely fucking pretty and muscular. I think almost every preference is represented here. Strong and skinny, Harek. Just skinny, Schneider. Big and strong, Loaf, Ruck, and Constantine. Mature, Hans and Ginebra. Not human, Valeria, Kunzmann and Hive. And let's not forget best girls Alicia and Iwena Quena. Certainly there are very different body types in this game, but only for men. The girls come down to big titty goth GF, which is not a bad thing. Give me 10 big titty goth GFs, but you know, there are other body types and different breast sizes. Hashtag I like small titties. I'm not going to look into every character because that would take too much time, but I will take a look at my main character Harek. If you want every character broken down and explained by a high level player, I would recommend the channel Hisasuke, link in the description. You have 17 different missions available. I of course have unlocked all of them, but you need to win one mission at least once to unlock the next mission in the row. You can either play as a raider or as an antagonist. As a raider, you will receive a task, and once you finish the task, you can usually move to the next map segment. Most of the missions have 3 of those, but some only have 2 or 1. With whom you get paired and how difficult the mission will be depends on your MMR, shown in the top right corner of the screen. This is important for 2 reasons. As a raider, every mission you play before 40 MMR is kind of a cakewalk. There's no challenge and you can sleepwalk through the levels and win. Everything above 40 MMR starts to hurt a little bit. The enemies start to take more damage and deal more damage. What I'm trying to say is that the game starts to get interesting after you have played for a few hours, and by a few hours I mean something like 40, 50 or 60 hours. Why there is no difficulty selection I have no idea, but my assumption is that the devs wanted to group players with the same amount of experience together and not divide players by implementing something like difficulty, which is a noble cause but ultimately doesn't work because you can force your MMR down at any time just by forcing losses, and your MMR also naturally goes down when you don't play. There's also no benefit to push your MMR up since you don't get more money or experience with higher MMR, so the whole MMR thing is kind of fucked. As an antagonist, you will have a hard time finding games in general, and the higher MMR, the less likely you're going to find the game under 10 minutes. I think even with my relatively low MMR, it took around 10 upwards to 20 minutes to find Antag games on specific missions. One thing that the game does that I think is smart is that after a certain amount of wait time, it just offers you a game on another map if you can't find a game on your chosen map. This is actually a great idea, but at the same time there's no decline mission button once the game finds a mission for you. So similar to the missing apply changes button in the settings, it's not a big deal, but still a decline mission button would be pretty neat instead of me having to wait for 30 seconds and then be booted out of the queue process and have to queue again. Antag has other problems related to MMR, but I will speak about those once we talk about the specific missions. Brace yourselves, because I'm going to go mission by mission talking about the story, the raiders, the Antag, and the general gameplay. If you want to skip those parts, I have timestamped everything, and keep in mind that this is from a perspective from a low-level player and Harek Antag.
Crazy son of 1,000 dingoes.
The first mission, called Hanging by a Thread, introduces us to Harek, Hans, Konstantin, Alicia, and Lycus. Poor Hans actually yeets himself out of the story after the first cutscene. The story itself will not reveal much about the characters, but background information can be found in the universe files or the motion comics. The universe files are basically part of the lore, and you can find them in-game. Depending on the character, will explain something about them, or will just add some flavor. The motion comics can only be found on the Spacelords website and are an assortment of stories before the happenings of the game. So for you to understand more of the story and get a little bit more context, you need to read the comics and read the files, which is not a bad thing in itself, but as we move on, we'll see why I don't like this type of storytelling, especially if we take the end of the game into consideration. Alright, before we start, of course, we have to choose the character for the mission. It really doesn't matter which one you choose, you just need to unlock them first. Lycus is disabled for this mission because he is the task. This does make sense in universe, of course, but at the same time it does make sense gameplay-wise because you can play other characters like Valeria, who joins the gang way later, or Yoon, who doesn't have a presence in the cutscenes. Minor annoyance, I know, I just don't see the point in restricting the player this way if you don't need to choose the cutscene characters anyway. So once you choose a character, a cutscene starts playing and you can choose to watch it or skip it. You have to skip the cutscene every single time. You can be playing missions for the nth time. If one person on your team decides to watch the cutscene, you will be watching the fucking cutscene. Funny thing is that the cutscene is not even used to mask load times. The cutscene has to load in, and then load out, and then the level has to load in. Like the daily mission notification, this is pretty annoying, especially in longer playing sessions, where you just want to get into the game and not watch the cutscene over and over and over.
We know that the enemy is keeping Lycus Dion alive, and that they move him periodically to a new hideout. We were too late today.
Lycus Dion? That crazy son of 1,000 dingoes is on the planet. How was he captured? Why haven't they finished him off?
I don't know. Once they find out we look for him, it won't take them long.
You sure we want a motherfucker like that on the team? We should let him rot.
No. We'll get him out of there by boarding the transport they took him on. We can go through the cargo bay on the keel. Constantine managed to get updated docking codes. These should allow us to approach the shuttle without arousing suspicion.
It won't take them long to realize the codes are fake. We only get one chance.
So you're really serious about this guy? Are you out of your fucking minds or what?
Constantine said the same thing about you when he saw your name on my list.
Oh yeah? Go fuck yourself with a can opener, wanker.
Shuttle's ready. Whenever you want to go.
Let's move, or we'll lose the transport.
I'm out of here after this one. My business can't wait any longer.
Whatever. Let's go.
And over and over again. This is the only cutscene I will play in full, because every consecutive cutscene, with the exception of mission cutscenes, will take place either in this room or directly outside of this room. I assume it was done this way to save costs and have higher turnaround. With this method, you could just make a full new campaign by plopping you new characters in this room, getting the voice lines, and animating the character in this already finished location. It is very boring. Every single cutscene is raiders getting briefed, raiders rolling out, raiders coming back and talking outside. Why do raiders don't move bases if they are constantly being hunted by 3 separate factions? Are there other raider teams on other bases? Are all raiders acting independently? Where did Hans go after he left? None of those questions are answered, by the way. Not in the story and not in the lore. It is a cheap way to make cutscenes, and I think for most people it's enough since it looks pretty and the voice acting is on point. But for me, it isn't enough. Especially after reading all of the universe files and seeing all of the motion comics. Finally, after watching or skipping the cutscene, you're teleported onto a ship where Lycus is being held captive. As you can see, the gameplay is your standard third-person shooter, with the slight difference that you cannot hipfire. You can only fire when you aim down your sights. There are other gameplay systems that distinguish this game from the standard third-person shooter, but I will bring them up when they become relevant. The first map segment is a warehouse, and your goal is to protect Lycas from ads spawning in. They hide the spawning of the ads behind certain doors, but you still see them spawning in since you can see their stress outline. Stress, by the way, is something every character generates when walking or shooting. Some characters like the War Dogs generate a lot of stress for every action. The locals, on the other hand, hardly generate any stress. If your stress is too high, you will not be able to recover health, you can be wounded more easily, and you're visible to the enemies. This gives the game a decent amount of depth, and actually gives you a reason to take cover, since characters decrease stress faster when they hide behind cover. Anyways, the raiders lose if the enemies can mount Gatling guns and do enough damage to Lycas, but it's almost impossible for that to happen. Even if you're playing solo, not enough enemies spawn in at the same time, and they generally don't do enough damage. As an antagonist, you should have enough room to ambush the raiders, since the raiders want to suppress the enemies as much as possible. They therefore will probably split up, leaving you with enough time to kill one enemy, hide, and kill another enemy. In theory. In reality, the space is too small for raiders to be too far apart from each other. When I play Harik, I try to use his ability, which allows him to stick to walls as much as possible, but the moment the enemy team has a sniper, Harik's special ability can be suppressed really quickly, since you are basically a sitting duck once you stick to a wall. The spawn area for antagonists covers almost the whole map, but if the raiders want to spawn camp you, they will. Once the raiders inevitably succeed in their goal, we move on to the next map segment. This second segment is way more open and consists of an L-shaped area with one elevated place and a long corridor. Along the corridor you have 2 gun turrets that allow you to destroy gunships. Your goal here is to destroy 4 of those. Once you mount a gun turret and start shooting at the ships, you will receive damage and will have to pause your shooting to recover health. Meanwhile, another ship will drop Amber Water units to where the turrets are stationed, meaning if your team doesn't want to play ball and doesn't protect you while you're shooting the ships, you will most likely die. There's no time limit here, so there's no mission failure like the first mission segment, but there's another way how raiders can lose the mission. Raiders have collectively 2 charges of lives. One charge is 16, and the other one is 12 lives. If the antagonist kills the raiders 16 times, the raiders can't spawn for a certain period of time. If the antagonist kills all 4 raiders in that time, the raiders lose. If the Antag can't kill the raiders in the allotted time, the raiders can spawn again, and the Antag has to repeat the process with 12 lives. Should the Antag manage to kill the raiders 12 more times, the Antag will get another chance of killing them all in a certain period of time. If the raiders survive again, then they will be left with 5 lives, and should the Antag get those as well, then the raiders fail. And if that sounds way too lenient, it is because it is. The game is always heavily stacked against Antags. The win condition for Antags is not even comparable to the win condition of raiders, but we will get into that more and more the further we go into this video. Also, the system is better than the initial system because raiders had an unlimited stack of lives. That was fun. Anyways, this map segment doesn't look that bad for the antagonists at first. It's an open area, you have plenty of room to spawn, you have decent cover, and ships drop minions constantly. As an Antag, you can also command 3 minions at a time. They don't do much at lower MMR, but they can do a bit of damage at higher MMR. Harik, my main, also has a lot of places you can use his special ability, and it's where I win most Antag games on this map. There's one small problem though. The spawn area of the Antag is also where one of the gun turrets are, meaning that at some point the raiders will inevitably spawn camp your ass if they want it or not. This is not an uncommon occurrence, by the way. We will see more examples of that in the future. Harik can of course use his ability to move away, and there are a few other characters like Constantine who can escape spawn camping, but generally speaking, it's a pretty hard situation to deal with and escape from as an Antag. My solution would be to allow the Antag to spawn everywhere, but the system is already better than it was in the past, because in the past you could only spawn in spawn points, which was even more prone to spawn camping. So once the raiders destroy the ships, another part of the map opens up, and this part is pretty useless. It's a corridor that most raiders just rush through to get to an elevator and press a button. I've never seen a game where raiders get stuck here. There aren't even enough enemies to halt progress, and even if there were, there are enough raiders with movement abilities that can just rush through the elevator. As an Antag, you can actually sneak in a kill or two, since the raiders have to wait in the elevator for a few seconds to move on. Which brings us to the last map segment, which is a spiral with a giant generator in the middle. The raiders have to fill 3 smaller generators with valve, which will cause the giant generator to overheat and explode. Of course, the raiders escape before the generator overheats. Should be clear, right? Here you have an increased amount of elite units. Elite units have different special abilities, and this one makes itself invulnerable to melee attacks, recovers health rapidly, and can one-shot kill you if it grabs you when it's powered up. The only way to kill it is to deal enough damage so that it falls into recovery mode and dispose of it like any other unit. The engineers on this map will try to discharge the LF from the generators. They are pretty fast but don't make the mission more challenging. They're just annoyances. As an Antag, this segment will heavily depend on the raider you're using. If you're using a raider that can do a lot of damage at close range, like Ruck, you might have a chance here. As Harek, it's kind of difficult. Even though you have a lot of places for your ability, your view is constantly covered, making it difficult to hit anything. Is it impossible? No, but if the raiders have at least one brain cell, they will absolutely destroy you. The spawning area in this segment doesn't allow the raiders to spawn camp you, but since the raiders have to move constantly because of the engineers, they will always find out where you spawned, preventing you from surprising them. Generally speaking, this mission doesn't provide any challenge for the raiders. The raiders can lose if they don't play as a team in the second segment of the mission. Other than that, it's smooth sailing for them. The Antag is basically fucked at the last segment of the mission. The first and last segments are too small for the Antag to surprise raiders in any capacity, and raiders can spawn camp your ass in phase 1 and 2. If you win as an Antag, there is just a quick cutscene that also plays when the raiders lose normally, which is in my opinion wasted potential. The post-game screen is also pretty annoying. You can't skip it and you're forced to see the results. If you win, it is probably not as bad, but if you lose the game, it just rubs it in your face, trying to trigger you, you know? The game is like, take that, you loser. You also have to skip the cutscene at the end every single time. It takes around 1.5 minutes for you to finish a mission until you get back to the main menu, even if you skip all the cutscenes. And if that wasn't enough, on the main menu, a window pops up showing you experience and money every single time. Honestly, what the fuck? Just let me skip the post-game screen and get rid of the pop-up. It's just annoying and serves absolutely no purpose except to annoy me. By the way, if you win as a raider, Lycus joins the crew. For no reason. Well, you did free him, so maybe because of that. Okay, all of this just for the first mission. But I want to go into detail in this one because I will just keep adding new information with every new mission instead of repeating myself. I repeat certain things when it's appropriate, but generally speaking we will move much faster from now on.
Leave that to me, Red.
Now that we got Lycus, let's move on with our next character.
Big ass bitch, Iana Quena.
That is not exactly what I want to say, but yeah, we want to recruit best girl number 2, Ayana. And for that, we have to blow stuff up so that Aya falls out of favor of the Hades division and has to seek us out. So here's the thing. From the cutscene, we get information that Aya is from Africa and she has an undying commitment to her people. However, from the universe files, we get information that she was a space pirate, and from the mission cutscene, we get the feeling that Aya only cares about money and going back to Earth. It feels like 3 different people wrote this. One wrote the universe files, one wrote the briefing cutscene, and one wrote the debriefing cutscene. I mentioned before that I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing, that lore and story is delivered via different methods, but Aya doesn't seem to be consistent here. Sure, you could shrug it off and say, these are just different parts of her life. She's committed to her people, but she has to go into pirate business to support them, and was stranded on a broken planet once her crew got destroyed. That is the most likely explanation, but there is simply not enough information to say that is the case. And at this point I'm writing Spacelord's background story, and I don't like that, because maybe the creator has a completely different background story in mind that is not even close to what I am describing. If they don't have background story written out, well, then the story becomes kind of meh, and could have easily been left out. But what about the map? On this map we can see the sniper elite for the first time. They can't be attacked with melee attacks, similar to the heavy elite. They have to be down first, and then you can kill them normally. There are also captain elites. They can order drone strikes that make them invulnerable for a short period of time. The drone strikes themselves can be cancelled by destroying the Warhammer-esque floating skull. Generally speaking, this is a pretty good segment for Antags. As Harak specifically, you have a lot of high places where you can use ability on and dominate the map. The second part of the map is very short and can be shorter if the raiders do their job well. The idea behind this segment is that those shielded gun turrets will keep the raiders suppressed so that the Antag can pick them off. The problem is that the gun turrets break very easily, even at higher difficulties, and a wall that you have to break can be skipped by most raiders by performing a jump. The third segment is also very short and is based on the same principle of the gun turrets, with a horde attack at the end. Again, raiders have too much mobility and adds and turrets go down too fast for that to be effective. As an antagonist, you will have a hard time. The raider's objective can be completed very fast, just like the last segment, and as Harak specifically, it's hard to pick people off since there are not a lot of open areas. As a more close-range character, you might have better chances. Also, here you have a lot of opportunities to throw people off the map, and since we're already talking about throwing, so let's talk about the melee system. So in addition of being able to shoot and using your special ability, you can punch, roll, and grapple. Punching of course deals damage, punches can be avoided by rolling, and rolling can be countered by grappling. Grappling was once fatal, meaning that if you managed to grapple someone mid-roll or grappled someone off guard, they would die. Now you only throw people. If you manage to throw them off the stage, then they die. Of course. The old system was basically just rock, paper, scissors. The new system is also rock, paper, scissors, but with a broken scissor. If you throw someone against a wall, that can cause damage, but not enough to down them, and if you try to punch them afterwards, they can most likely just roll out of the way faster than you punch, for whatever reason. So there's really no reason to grapple ever, if they are not already downed. There are characters that can still do Fatal Grapple with certain cards and abilities, but generally speaking, Fatal Grapple doesn't exist anymore against raiders, because Fatal Grapple still exists as a raider against Eds. My whole point is that the melee system, since they don't have Fatal Grapple anymore, consists of mostly rolling and punching, and if you read your opponent completely and grapple him when he rolls out, you won't win the encounter if there's no cliff around. I understand why it was done this way to a certain extent, because the rock, paper, scissors system is heavily reliant on luck, but now it's just an inferior rock, paper, scissors game. You could just roll back the old system and everything would be fine. But if you want to keep the new system, for whatever reason, it needs to change. One of the ideas I had is to make grapples that come from cover fatal. So when you surprise someone, the grapple is fatal, and if you're already in a fight, it isn't. The other idea was the challenge idea, because as Antag, melee is practically useless, since you're playing 1v4, so the moment you hit someone, 3 other raiders are going to be shooting at you. The challenge system would create a little arena around your character and the opponent, not allowing damage in or out. This way you guys could duke it out until someone died. I'm still just for bringing the old system back though, so bring it back. Anyways, once the raiders move on, we arrive at the last segment. We have shielded gun turrets again, trying to suppress the raiders, but since they fall very quickly, they aren't really a threat. Once the raiders pass a certain threshold on the map, the spawn area of the Antag switches around. The goal of the raiders here is to break down a barrier and finally be extracted. Like the last 2 segments, the raiders' objective can be completed very quickly, not giving the Antag enough room to actually kill anyone. Cool, so once you embarrass the shit out of Aya, she has no choice but to join Harak's crew, and you already know the rest.
What's wrong with you, man?
The next cutscene doesn't tell us much. We learn about General Crusher from Hades Vision, but that's basically it. Anyways, your job as a raider here is to use a key to get the character called Schneider. There are no map segments here, instead we have 3 doors. And after that, the raiders have to move back to the starting position with Schneider. Nothing stands out from the raiders' side, but as an Antag, this map can be challenging at first. Before the first door opens, the spawn area is pretty small and raiders are too fast for you to spawn comfortably, and once you die, the raiders will automatically spawn camp your side, since the objective is on top of the spawn area. This is not the first time this happens, of course, which leads me to believe that this is intended. If it is intended, what the fuck? You put an antagonist that has no inherent advantage like double health or double damage or double speed against 4 raiders, and then you put the spawn area directly on top of the objective. Can you see the problem? There are 2 ways to combat this problem, which are already in the game, by the way. One is to switch the spawn area once the raiders pass a certain threshold, and 2 is simply to make those corridors longer. If you want to go ham, do both. If this whole thing is not intended, what the fuck? This will not be the last time I mention something about the Antag and how the Antag system is inherently broken. This map specifically is discriminatory against Antags, since objectives and spawn areas sit on top of each other or close to each other. Later on it opens up and it becomes more fair, but in the beginning it's a complete nightmare. So once the raiders get Schneider and kick him in the balls, we move on to the next part of the story.
You fucking bastard!
The raiders want to know what Crusher is doing, so they brainwash Schneider to let them into a secret base. Okay, so this mission has 2 segments. First segment has the raiders escorting Schneider to hack terminals. The raiders can fail if Schneider takes enough damage, breaking the brainwashing and Schneider counter-hacking. Even though Antags have a lot of room to spawn, it's still pretty hard to spawn in a place where raiders won't see you. Sure, as Harak you have your special ability, but there are places that you can see but you cannot attach yourself to. It is probably done this way because of balancing, but the balancing falls out of whack in the next segment, therefore I don't really understand why you can't use the ability everywhere. So once the raiders inevitably fulfill the objective, Schneider breaks loose of the brainwashing, betrays the raiders, and the boss fight ensues. The boss itself is not really interesting. It jumps around sometimes, if you get too close it stomps, throws missiles and shit like that. And sometimes it jumps up and stays conveniently above elderflowers that you can destroy, forcing the boss to open out the cockpit to do more damage. Very convenient. Bosses in this game are not the most exciting thing ever, to be honest. So, I mentioned before that Tarek's ability was restricted, and I assumed that was to balance the game out. Well, guess what? You can use Tarek's ability so high up that if the raiders don't have a sniper on their own team, they're pretty much fucked. On top of that, soldiers spawn in the arena all the time. So this is the first time, as Tarek at least, where the arena, the boss, and the circumstances are stacked towards the Antag. Even the spawn area is fair because the arena is so big that raiders sometimes need to split up and walk alone to get rid of elites. I don't think it was done intentionally to balance things towards the Antag. If you think about it, this arena is big because of the boss. The boss is big. It can jump, it can stomp, and it jumps up high places. The arena is serving the boss, not the Antag. We will see the direct opposite map design on the next mission. Yeah, by the way, raiders kill Schneider. Oopsie.
The daughter?
The Hades division has created a weapon of mass destruction and is orbiting the broken planet to destroy parts of it. Why you would break already broken... Don't ask me. Anyways, the raiders jump on the ship with the MD and start overloading the thing with Aleph. The mission has only one map segment that is just a long open corridor with one enemy spawn at each end. The enemies again don't spawn fast enough for the raiders to be challenged. The heavy elites here can hurt when you get hit by them. Depending on your MMR, this mission can also get a bit crazy, not because there are more enemies, but because they just deal a lot of damage. As an Antag, you can get camped hard. The Antag spawn area is directly on the opposite side of the raider spawn area, and once the raiders decide to hang around your spawn, you pretty much get ficked. Also, the soldier spawn is in the Antag spawn area, putting yet another objective pretty close to the Antag spawn, which is like, yeah, well. Yeah, at this point you guys should have noticed that this is definitely intended. Why it is like this, I don't know, but it can't be a coincidence that there are so many Antag spawn points directly or near objectives. The mission might not have a second map segment, but it has a second phase. So once the raiders overload the ship, Anaska appears in a mech suit and starts attacking. She flies most of the time, uses cutting lasers and targeted missiles. Again, not the most challenging boss, but way better than Schneider since you have to be way more proactive to avoid damage. At some point, Aneska also tries to buff herself with Aleph, and the raiders can either destroy the Aleph machine or overflow it, causing the mech suit to overheat, making an opening for the raiders to attack Aneska like Schneider when he got blown up by Aleph flowers. Conveniently, the goal as an Antag is still the same, but even with the help of the boss, raiders can still spawn camp you ass. And again, if you think about it, the map was balanced for the boss. The boss flies, so it can't be in an enclosed space. It has attack missiles, so the area has to be small enough so that it can hit someone. It uses cutting lasers, again forcing the map to be small. My point is that retrospectively we can confirm that Schneider's balance towards the Antag was purely coincidental. And this will be confirmed again and again in every single boss battle, or map for that matter. Alright, once the raiders defeat Aneska, she falls to the ground and we never see her again. But who is Aneska and what happened after she fell? Well, there's nothing that shows how Aneska survived in the story itself. We know that after Aneska's failure, Crusher was pissed at her, most likely Crusher saved Aneska, and then wanted to kill her. Instead, Aneska cut his head off and joined the raiders. Also, Hive Big Gay. Fun fact, here's the line. From the universe files, we also know that Mika joined the raiders, and how it is written, Mika was already part of the raiders and has been for quite a while. I will not talk about Mika and Hive in this video since they have no connection to the main story like many characters do. Okay, so when I say I don't think delivering story and lore this way is a bad thing, that is what I mean. It closes off the Aneska story and explains simply why she joined the raiders and why she stayed. It's literally all I've run from the universe files, nothing more.
Something stinks here.
So Shay has been captured by Kunzman, and the raiders want to get her back. The raiders' goal in the first segment is to destroy tentacles and later a death balloon of some sort. The thing in this map is that lasers are constantly targeting you, and if you stay out of cover for too long, they will disintegrate you. Depending on how fast the raiders are, this section can take 5 or 15 minutes. Generally speaking, the Antag has many opportunities to pick raiders off, since raiders are restricted in their movement. Especially as Harak, you have so many places you can use your ability on, and you can also just spawn camp the raiders for once. The second part of the map pits the raiders against Kunzman. The raiders can actually fail here if Kunzman electrocutes Shay, and she stays electrocuted for a certain amount of time, but I have never seen that happen. Some enemy soldiers spawn in, but not enough for it to be really a threat. Kunzman himself can electrocute the raiders, preventing the raiders from healing, but that's basically it. So remember how Schneider's boss arena was big and high? Well, Kunzman's boss arena is small and low, because it's also small and low. Schneider's boss arena is great for Harak, but generally speaking it's also a good arena for Antags, since raiders can be separated and will have to inevitably split up because they have to deal with the tank elites and sniper elites. Kunzman's boss arena is so small that raiders always will be sitting on top of each other. Even spawning in this arena can be difficult. Sure, you can always find a place that is not being watched by the raiders, but as soon as you pop out your head, the raiders are going to know where you are, and you have no place to fall back to or hide. Also, Kunzman does barely do anything to raiders. There are no stomp attacks like Schneider or missile attacks like Aneska that force the raiders to evade. Kunzman is basically just a normal brainless soldier with a lot of health and the electrocute function. What I'm saying is that Schneider and Aneska are bosses designed to actively help the antagonist, even though it's more coincidental damage that they do, and Kunzman is just a roadblock. I haven't mentioned before, but since the boss design is basically just the character of Kunzman with a big health bar, why can't the antagonist just take control of Kunzman? I didn't think that it would be helpful to take over Schneider or Aneska, since they can't really kill raiders reliably, their kills are more coincidental, but here we have basically just a raider with a big ass health bar. Just food for thought. The raiders of course defeat Kunzman and save Shay. Shay is not happy because the raiders basically ruined her plans to infiltrate the 5th Council and destroy their facilities. It is also heavily implied that Harak is in love with Shay, besides the next 2 or 3 cutscenes where we'll never see Shay again.
It's a load of crap.
Now that we have a big group of raiders, we can find the Protectors. Who the fuck are the Protectors? And why haven't we heard about them? It's kind of weird that the Protectors weren't brought up in the first place, because they will be very important at the end of the game. Before we talk about the Protectors, let's talk about the story structure. The story so far was basically structured like this. And then. There's no real connection between the events that happen. Why do we need Likers? Well, I don't know. Why do we need Iwena? Well, to have insider information on the Hades division, probably. But that story point was resolved in the following mission after we got Iwena. Why do we need Shay? Well, most likely because Harak is in love with her. But other than that, we don't get much besides more firepower. It is kind of weird that after the first campaign, basically, we get introduced to the long-term goal of the Raiders. Finding the Protectors to send the humans back to Earth and live happily ever after. I think the Protector story beat should have come before the whole first saga. Lycus has no connection to anything, but he could be a person that could naturally attract Elef, being able to free the Protectors. Iena, also no connection to the rest of the story, but she could be someone that knows the location of the first Protector, since she works for the Hades division. Shay could actually be in the same position as she was in the story, but due to her abilities with Elef, she could find Protectors forcing the Raiders to free her. All I'm saying is that all the events could at least be a little bit more connected. I think you don't even need to change the story beats themselves. The Hades division can still have made these planet-destroying weapons. Lycus could still be a prisoner of the Hades division, and so on. Right now, it does feel very disconnected and more like a villain of the week story, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But since there are universe files and comics trying to explain backstories and how things are connected, I don't think it was necessarily intended to be so disconnected. Of course, it's just an assumption, but beyond the assumption, I don't like it either. I like my story connected and tight and not loose and wobbly. Right, so who are the Protectors again? For that we have to step back a little. The natives of the Broken Planet were once an aggressive race of imperialists. Their technological advance was immense, and since the discovery of Elef, they advanced even faster. Like all advanced cultures with hubris, they tried to gain more and more power by drilling into the planet's core. To extract more Elef, of course. As you can imagine, the planet broke. What a surprise, right? Just really quickly, don't do this. Don't do this ever to advanced societies. They wouldn't drill into planet's core. Just stop. It's dumb. Nobody's gonna do it. Search for another thing. Planet core, drilling into planet core. Don't do this anymore. It is a dumb plot point. It's dumb. Equally as dumb as time travel. While most of the inhabitants stayed on the planet out of shame, some disagreed and ventured into the vast open cosmos with their technology. Some of those reached Earth, and that is how Earthlings managed to travel to the Broken Planet. On the Broken Planet itself, the locals slowly rolled back on their technological advances and genetically modified the next generation of Planeteers to show less violent and competitive tendencies. They also did selective breeding. They did basically eugenics. Raiders of the Broken Planet, they are literal fascists. Sure, their intentions are pure, but if you're selectively breeding out certain traits of your species and you're modifying them genetically, there's no other word for that. Anyways, even if the locals wish to go back to simpler times, some thought it would be a waste to throw all the knowledge away, and maybe someday better species could make use of their technology. For the information to be safe, 3 Protectors were chosen as keys. The Protectors entered the Elef and were never seen again. Now the Raiders have found a medallion that can detect where one of the Protectors is, and so they make their way to the location, but the place the Raiders have to go is...
That area is infested with war dogs.
Hey, it's me, editing this video, and look who is here! It's Hans! It's Hans! Look at this! It's Hans! I never noticed that, but Hans is here. I did a mistake in the beginning where I said Hans never appears again. Apparently he appears here. But I think that's it. That's pretty much it. He never says something. He doesn't do anything. And after this cutscene, he's not there anymore. He's like, yep, I'm helped with the Protectors, I guess. I think he's supposed to be gone because he said that in the first mission.
That area is infested with war dogs.
Thanks, Ellie. The mission is pretty straightforward, infuse a thing with Aleph, and move on. Nothing you haven't seen before. Since this map has a lot of vision blocks everywhere, it is pretty easy for the raiders to move around, but this also balances the map towards the Antag. Since the map is big and round, and since the objectives are at two ends of the map, raiders will inevitably be forced to split up. Most of the time someone will be defending one objective and the others will be gathering Aleph. Especially as Harak, you have a lot of room to play with, since there's a ceiling that you can use your ability on, making it possible to pick raiders off one by one. In theory, this is how it would work, but in reality, raiders just gonna focus you down since they have a lot of downtime when there's no heavy or Aleph mule on the map. Still, I would say this is one of the more balanced maps. In the next segment, raiders have to down 3 giant balls that shoot lasers, and once those bolts go down, they have to infuse it with Aleph. This can be very challenging for the raiders, even low MMR, since there are snipers everywhere, and the map is relatively open, and there are a lot of ads. By the way, if you have noticed, the map is open because there are snipers in it. Putting obstructions would hinder the snipers. Again, balance for the raiders, not for the Antag. As an Antag, you can pick raiders off if they are not paying attention, but the openness of the area can also be your downfall. There are safe places to spawn here, but to be able to get rid of raiders, you will have to step out eventually, without any place to retreat to. If you think about it, the second segment is just the first segment, but with less obstruction. Seems like blocking raiders' vision might be something that can help Antags, but this map wasn't built for Antags. Like I said, this map was built for the snipers. So once the raiders destroy all the laser balls, a protector pops out. Her name is Amar, and her clothing choice is risque, I would say. She's unfortunately completely useless, but hey, Shay saw some symbols that are unique to protectors. How convenient. That is why I would rather have a team member with the ability to find protectors. That way you don't need to rely on conveniences to move to the next plot point. It's not that bad, since Shay has been traveling a lot. It's not far-fetched that she would be able to find something close to that, you know.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Apparently the protectors are the key to activate a warp drive. Remember when I said that the protectors are key to unlock knowledge? Well, knowledge apparently means warp drive, for some reason. Even though in the lore, the knowledge is gone and nobody should know what a warp drive is. Whatever, it will get worse towards the end. Like I mentioned before, Shay saw the protector symbols at some mine somewhere, and that is where the raiders are going. At this point you should have gotten used to the mission task of infusing Aleph into something. Well, this time you infuse Aleph into people, and that is how you can spot a protector for some reason. The raiders can lose if the enemies manage to kill the protector, but at low MMR it is a snooze fest. At high MMR, the enemies can nail your ass by constantly attacking the protector and getting his shield down, forcing the raiders to infuse him with Aleph again and again and again, exposing themselves, of course. Generally speaking, the Antag has a chance here, since the raiders will most likely be trying to get the protector as fast as possible. If the raiders want to be effective, they will split up, giving the Antag enough time to pick one off and then falling back. As an Antag, you can also just go for the protector and try to kill him once the raiders find him. As Harak, you have of course a lot of room to play with, since you have a lot of places to use your ability on, and this is an open area surrounded by high walls. Of course, any character that can shoot at long distances with a good amount of accuracy will be able to pick you off, but that is the downside of Harak in general. Depending on the situation you can find yourself, there are also enough places where you can just throw a raider off the map. It's very situational. Since snipers spawn here and engineers can activate gun turrets, I would say this map segment is pretty much catering to Antags. In the second segment, I think they tried to do the same thing as in Low Blow. But here's the thing, many characters have movement abilities that can move them past that defensive line and pick those guys off from behind. Even if there were a lot of enemies, it doesn't do much as a roadblock. The only thing challenging for the raiders here is the King of the Hill section at the end of this segment. As an Antag, you have actually places to hide before and after the raiders move past you, so there isn't much of a disadvantage here. Especially as Harak, you can just be a dick and try to kill the Protector. So even though I wouldn't necessarily say this map is in any way, shape or form balanced towards the Antag, it's not that something that I think Antags aren't entirely unhappy with. Alright, so once the Protector stops time, yep, that's a thing the Protector can do. The Raiders flee with Uragal, but he wasn't the last Protector. Unfortunately, Protectors are useless and they don't know where their own kin are. Seems like being useless is part of being the Protector. This cutscene is also the only cutscene that slightly hints towards the existence of the Antags and a being called Uras Beharit. Beharit? Beharit. Who the fuck is Uras? Here's where we run into a problem that happens once you start delivering stories with comics and information outside of cutscenes. We actually don't know who Uras is. We know that he can take over bodies and manifest into black goo, but more importantly, we know Uras got out and found Harak. Yak is responsible for the release of Uras. Everything else is complicated. The tale that talks about the origins of Uras also doesn't tell us much and doesn't seem to be directly connected to the main story or the planet story. Also, Ura gets dropped after the next mission without explanation and we never hear from him again. He's just not a plot point. Anyways, we have defined the last Protector, right?
Let's crush those fucking hollow ones.
We now know the location of the third Protector.
What? Can you please repeat that?
We now know the location of the third Protector.
Yep, we just know the location of the last Protector magically, and he was captured by the 5th Council. Magically! If you weren't convinced that this story is pretty much all told in the way of and then statements, well, he is a smoking fucking gun. It's just very convenient. And no, universe files don't expand on this whole story. Forget about it. Funny enough, I would say the mission is not half that bad. I would say this map is quite unique since it's pretty big and asymmetric for Spacelord standards. Since the map is big, it provides opportunities for the raiders to be separated. The objectives are far away from each other, forcing the raiders to split up. And it has a lot of places to hide, giving the raiders enough cover, but also the Antag enough places to spawn. They could make the map a little bit better by having 2 objectives active at all times, actually forcing raiders apart of each other. Of course, as Harak, you can have a good time here because of those aforementioned aspects of the map. Also, there are a lot of high walls, giving you a lot of room to play with. The second part of the map though, well, circle again, and you have to infuse the Protector to drive out Uras, and then damage it. There are no ads here, instead you have slugs that you have to hit, which will teleport you into a room in which you have to fight a clone of yourself. And psst, you can win every encounter just by continuously pressing the punch button. Try it out for yourself, it's true. If we still had the old melee system, then this would be an actual challenge, but it's not. So yeah, great job Mercury system, you broke your own game. So here's where I'm pretty much convinced that Antags were never actually meant to exist for the player. I mentioned that there is only one reference to the Antags in cutscenes, and in-game this is the only reference to the Antag. Well, besides the Antag himself, but it seems that that line...
Have you fought strange manifestations? Beings that look like you but try to kill you?
He's actually referencing this part of the game, but it comes after the one cutscene. This could be just a coincidence, but this is for me a hint that maybe the Antags, how they exist right now, were never supposed to exist. Anyways, if you don't deal with the slugs, they will turn into monsters that will kill you in one hit. After getting Elef from the fights against themselves, the raiders have to infuse the Protector and shoot the Elef cysts coming from Uma's legs, coming out of the Protector's mouth. Do that a few times until the boss leaves the Protector's body. Yay! Since the map is circular and mid-sized, the Antag doesn't have any inherent disadvantage, and the ads are at least useful a little bit. Nothing special, to be honest. So after doing all the shiz, the Protectors are reunited and they just fuck off from the story until the very end of the game, which I will roast once we get there.
Yeah, boy.
Now we are back to acquiring raiders. I don't know why we need them. But hey, they even need a reason, so let's just get love. So here's the other side of the coin when it comes to delivering lore in with universe files. You can sometimes just tell the players nothing, because I don't know love. I have no clue who Loaf is. And I read his story. I also don't know why the devs keep making maps that are basically corridors, and this one has basically the same problem as Destroyer Worlds. Raiders can camp the Antag. There are more walls here allowing Harek to use his ability, but Raiders can still spawn camp the Antag if they want to. The tasks are things that you've done before. Carry stuff, infuse the Aleph with stuff, and get the fuck out. Even though you basically destroy Loaf's house, he just joins your team.
Sweet Jesus, is this shit for real?
Marmalade used Loaf as a test subject and now thinks that by infusing himself with enough Aleph, he will become God. The Raiders are supposed to intercept Marmalade's next Aleph delivery. You might think that we're doing the interception because Loaf told us, but it doesn't seem like it. Loaf has been hiding in a hole for a while, so he shouldn't know anything about the outside world. He's most likely not the reason why they're doing this shite. I do ask myself though, why there's no connection between getting Loaf and then destroying this whole Aleph delivery. I simply don't know. First map segment, nothing special. Infuse something with something. There you go. A second map segment is a corridor. Again, the Raiders have to infuse something with Aleph, again, but with the added complication that snipers spawn on this map. Also, there's a ship constantly shooting at the map, which is fun. Generally speaking, the Raiders don't have much of a struggle here, but if you get caught by the gunship, you might have a hard time. Again, the spawn area of the Antag is directly where the objective of the Raiders is. I mean, what to expect in such a small area? It's Spawn Camp City. In the end, the Raiders succeed, but it turns out that they didn't need to do that because they could have died. I don't know how Raiders die actually, because they seem to have this spawn ability with Aleph, so whatever. Instead of risking their lives, they could have gotten an artifact that sucks off Aleph. Loaf knew that, he just didn't tell anyone, and that's why you see Loaf and Constantine go at each other's throat at the end of the mission.
Party time.
So, the Lair Sphere is an artifact from the past locals. It can suck up Aleph from any source. The more Aleph a source has, the higher the output. Since General Fickgesicht has been gobbling up the juicy Aleph, he's of course at a disadvantage against the Lair Sphere. The mission itself consists of destroying a tentacle ship, taking the Lair Sphere from A to B and letting it charge up, and infusing the Lair Sphere with Aleph. These are your typical mission tasks. We have of course a corridor map again, but instead of something like Destroyer Worlds on the Reservations, this one has at least objects blocking vision, giving raiders and antagonists enough of room to play with. It's still pretty much Spawn Camp City, but it's a step forward. So, after getting the sphere, Lycus lets something slip and Constantine barks at him. This sets up a mission in the future, but for now we only have the name Mighty Mouse. By the way, this is the only time a future mission is properly set up. Almost all of the missions are set up with and then statements. Yep, there are the missions that are set halfway decent, but this one actually opens up a question and then it lets it sit for a while, because for now, we need to get into the...
Ah, that is plan.
I don't know, but after so many missions, I can barely distinguish between the maps, since they are either a circle or a corridor, and I have to do either infuse something with Aleph, carry something somewhere, or press a button and wait. Of course, this is a simplistic description of this whole thing, and there are maps that take the corridors and the circles and make something special out of it, but most of the maps are pretty similar in shape and especially in task distribution. This is one of the maps that does something different with the whole concept. The folding bridges are a good idea in general and gives the Antag a lot of room to play with. Forcing the raiders to move clockwise also plays back into the bridge mechanic, creating this gameplay flow of raiders trying to push forward, the Antag trying to block them, the Antag falling back, and the raiders trying to push forward again. Theoretically. In reality, smart raiders will just rush to get the generator, and if you play someone like Harek, you can have a hard time if the raiders have a sniper. The second segment is a fight to the death with General Fickgesicht. First phase is shooting out Fickgesicht's eyes, activating the pig, and then shooting at the exposed area of Fickgesicht. Do that until it clips the boss and tentacles will hit the ground. Shoot assists on the tentacles like in the mission Evil Within, and repeat the process until the boss dies. Well, phase 2 actually starts. And good luck if you don't have at least 5 Aleph, because your job is to activate the pig, but it will be bombarded with tanks, snipers, and mules that will take away Aleph from the pig. Also, the boss will constantly hit the ground with his tentacles and he will make the floor lava. At high MMR, this can be a pain in the fucking butt. If I would make a case for an unbalanced map, this is the one that I would make a case for. If you're an Antag and you can keep yourself alive in the last part of the map, you can have a feast, because even if the map is super small and doesn't have much of cover, the map is busy and the raiders will inevitably lose health to the environment, giving the Antag a lot of chances to pick the raiders off. In theory, Spawn Camp City still exists. If the raiders can activate a pig, they get rid of Fickesich. We get a lovely cutscene where General Fickesich gets a pineapple shoved up his ass. I think it's funny, but also I'm hugely impaired, so I can't really judge.
The fuck is wrong with you, man?
Finally, we arrive at the last set of missions, and surprisingly enough, this mission is hinted at with the Mighty Mouse reference from Lycus. We want to recruit Valeria, which is actually described as a snake. So, Lycus reference should be more like, what about that snake? But at this point I have given up on understanding Spacelord's story, to be honest, so I don't give a shit anymore. I would like to highlight one sentence from the universe files though, referencing the soldiers. I can't help it. Although virtual, they are all human, and statistically speaking, 40 out of every 100 are idiots. Unfortunately, I can't modify their behavioral algorithms without catastrophically altering their nature. I might be stupid, but I think the devs are trying to tell us that the AI for the ads are kind of dumb. And if they would change these soldiers, it might break. Just getting the vibes from this line. Of course, we have this beautiful booty shot of Best Girl Alicia. Nothing to add with the story, but Alicia Best Girl, Fight Me. Also, you might have noticed that Iona, Shay and Loaf have basically yeeted themselves out of the story. If you didn't see Aya since the Hades Division story wrapped up, Shay has been missing since the local storyline had ended, and Loaf basically yeeted himself out of the story as soon as the War Dogs wrapped up. Anyways, the raiders find themselves on a square this time. Whoop whoop, we have discovered a new geometrical shape. I'm taking the piss, of course. The map is nothing special, as an Antag can still be spawn camped if the raiders want to, but that shouldn't be news, right? In the second phase of the map, the raiders have to destroy one of those elf flesh balloons. Apparently those things are people and technology combined. If the stars align, the raiders can use gun turrets to damage those things as well. After that is done, we arrive at a circle again. Spacelords has a lot of circular maps. God damn it. The boss is of course Valeria. Valeria keeps flying around the map, shooting her giant Leck mich Kanone. Every now and again she will bombard an area that occasionally can kill raiders. And at some point she will go invisible. At this point raiders have to infuse the Tower of Aleph to uncloak her. And yes, I'm aware that you can only do so much with Aleph. And once you code the infusing process, it's a smart move to use the code again. But you know, if you have that specific task in almost every single map, I will get bored of it. I didn't complain about the lever mechanic or the button mechanic that much because it appeared in maybe 2 or 3 maps. I didn't complain about carrying stuff from A to B because again it appeared in 2 or 3 maps. But infusing an object with Aleph appeared in every single map until now. Like I said, what about throwing Aleph? That would basically do the same thing at the end, but it would break the routine of walking up to things and pressing the fucking button to infuse Aleph with something. It is not super engaging to be honest, but at least something different. And you already coded the throwing mechanic, so why not implement that? As an Antag, this map is generally speaking fine. A lot of cover, a lot of ads, and the boss does a decent amount of damage sometimes. As Harak, you have basically a very tall tower where you can use your ability on all the time. Can't see the whole map from the tower, but you can basically see 60 to 70% of the map, and to cover more you just adjust your stalker position. It is great, but if a sniper wants to focus you down, well, they always will. After some small complications, the raiders capture the snake, and since Valeria is a fucking loudmouth, she's tricked into telling the raiders that the 5th Council will be using a thing called Nimrod, and since they have that info, they can now fuck up the 5th Council.
She's a clever bitch.
The raiders reset Valeria's memory and convince her that she is in a simulation. Valeria, since she doesn't know that she is in the real world, helps the raiders to come up with a plan to destroy the Nimrods. I feel like this is a little bit of a stretch. Shouldn't Valeria be able to distinguish between IRL and VR? Her universe files mention that she has an AI partner called Sarah. Shouldn't she be asking for Saria? Like I said, it's a little bit of stretch, and this is a perfect example of what I say. Generally speaking, it's not a bad thing to deliver lore this way or story this way, but then you have to be very careful because things like this can happen. Anyways, this map is, who would have guessed, a circle again, with a giant ass brain in the middle. This time you don't have to infuse anything with Aleph, but raiders have to collect Aleph, then carry some parts, and then insert those parts into a machinery, and then you have to infuse it with Aleph. You thought you could escape the infusing Aleph with something, you know? You're wrong. Since the giant brain dome is in the middle of the map, it's not open as it seems. There's also a lot of cover here, giving the Antags and the raiders a lot of room to play with. It's, generally speaking, not a bad map, to be honest. And also, objectives are not so close to each other that they sit on top of each other, so raiders have always something to do. As Harik, you have the added bonus that you can also use ability on the dome and almost outside of the circle. Generally speaking, a balanced map. Seems like with each set of maps, they were balancing stuff more and more towards the Antag. But I don't know if it was intended or not, since even if the objectives are at least not on top of the spawn areas, and at least a bit far away from each other, there's no incentive for splitting up. In fact, none of the maps have any real incentives for raiders to split up. They split up because they're either confident in their abilities, or because they want to finish the map as fast as possible. The end cutscene doesn't tell us much, but hey, it's more ass for you here. Speaking of bottom, it's time to look up.
Duh.
I'm very proud of this joke. Please laugh. Turns out destroying one Nimrod didn't make much sense since the council has a lot of them, but Valeria is super fucking smart and has made a Trojan that can affect the council system, destroying it and exposing the headquarters of the 5th council, giving the raiders the chance to finish the council off good. I like Valeria. She's a good revolutionary. Let's hope she doesn't die like another Robespierre I know. And wow! A character that is contributing to the story without being sidelined? They not only are making better maps, they are making better stories! I'm fucking surprised! Upside down is an arena again. But this time, it is big again, and you have to move a thing from A to B and insert your Aleph and then wait for the phase. Phase 2 is actually not a pure boss fight, and I like it because it uses all the mechanics that we usually use outside of the boss fights. Kunzman is the boss, by the way. He kind of vanished after we say Shay, but apparently he had been hanging out here all along. Anyways, you have to damage the boss until his head falls off. Put the head on a terminal and then infuse it with Aleph. The boss will be stunned for a while, and if you manage to bring the boss down while it's moving towards the head, the meter that determines when the boss fight will end will actually continue to go up. This actually asks the raiders to try to be as tactical as possible. If the raiders manage to focus the boss down, they will be able to end the fight earlier because theoretically they can fill up the progress bar after the first head drop. This of course plays great into the hand of the Antag. The raiders can either try to focus on the boss, but if they don't watch out for the Antag, they will be picked off one by one. Directing their attention towards the Antag though prolongs the fight and increases the rate of failure. Especially as Harik, you can deal a lot of damage since you have the whole ceiling as your playground, and a bunch of buildings that are actually outside of the arena, giving as much distance from the raiders that you can ask for. All of this creates again this ebb and flow of combat where raiders have to decide on focusing on the boss and blocking off the Antag. A feeling that I really get on this map and on the first segment of the Beast's Lair. Still there are a few problems with this map that I want to talk about, but generally speaking, it's pretty good. Moving on, the raiders take Kunzman's head as a souvenir. Valeria almost finds out that she's in a simulation, and Lycus kicks Kunzman's head into orbit, which reminds me of Team Rocket.
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay?
Finally, the last mission, and weirdly enough, it doesn't feel like the last mission because nothing has been set up properly. Several characters have been yeeted out of the story, the Protectors fucked off as soon as the last one joined them, and there's still no main story to speak of. We killed Schneider because we could, we defeated Aneska so that the Hades Division doesn't destroy the broken planet, which is already destroyed, but then the Hades Division vanished. We killed Fickgesicht because we could, but then the whole War Dog thing was gone. We destroyed the Nimrods because they could find the Protectors, and that's the only storyline that plays back into the Raiders' long-term goal, which is basically introduced after the first story. Let's not forget that we also found the Protectors because
We now know the location of the third Protector.
the Raiders just randomly knew where the Protector was. It would have been more reasonable that Shay knows something about the third Protector since she's explicitly moved a lot. Nope, it's just this. And wait, aren't the Protectors supposed to be inside of the Elef? Neither Old Man Protector nor Boy Protector were inside of the Elef. Did we just forget about that? I think we did. I guess we did. The War Dog storyline has a little bit less problems since Loaf becomes kind of an informant in quotation marks. But why does Loaf know about Elias? Shouldn't Shay know about his stuff? You know, someone local to the planet that travels a lot. Not someone that explicitly has been hiding in a bunker for the past whatever time. Those stories, they didn't build up to each other. They're very loosely connected. And by very loosely, I mean very loosely. And very inconsistent. The most consistent one being the Fifth Council so far. And since I mentioned the Fifth Council, we should get back to destroying their headquarters so that they don't find the Protectors. This is the only cutscene that shows the pilot that has been flying around everywhere. And his name is Cortez. Former smuggler working for all sides, including War Dogs and Hades. He has 3 identical twins called Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and I think you all know what that is referencing to. Cortez is not a playable character, which is a wasted potential to be honest. Imagine a character that can control 4 people at once. You could have your 3 twins that work like ads, you have to spawn them and you can give them orders like shoot from cover, run and gun, or hold position. There's already a command wheel, I can see a character working like that. Could be interesting. Anyways, we of course want to get to the headquarters of the council. Cortez is like, nah, you shouldn't, you know, you will get caught. And Valeria is like, shut the fuck up, you scum. And then the raiders move out and then immediately get caught, like Cortez said. But we landed in front of the council, which consists of a giant robot body and 3 faces. We find ourselves again in an arena. This fight is not especially unique. First phase is shooting at the faces. After that, the boss brains will be exposed. Shoot at that until it hits a certain threshold. And you get a little side mission, for example, killing X amount of soldiers or elites. You get the point. Since a lot of ads spawn on this map, this can get quite challenging, but nothing compared to the Beast Lair. The thing that makes this map great is actually the antagonist, the boss mechanics, and the antagonist together playing to each other. The boss itself doesn't do much damage, but the Antag hindering the progress of the raiders during the boss's downtime is great. It's a great boss Antag combo, but only theoretically. Yes, it's challenging, but not because of the boss Antag combo, it's because Harek fits this map great. And at high MMR, the spawn goes wild. The same thing that happened in Schneider's arena happens here as well, because you have high ceiling, and with Harek's ability you can actually stalk there. It's even high up and away from the arena, so it's even worse. It can happen that you just hang out in your stalker position and the raiders never reach the second phase of the fight. Yep, this is the map that I would say just favors the Antag, especially Harek. Should the raiders succeed though, we get rid of the council, and with the Hades Division and War Dogs gone, we just jump back to the Protectors, and by jump, I mean we literally jump. There is no connecting tissue between the end of the council campaign and the end of the game. And I get it, okay? I get it. It makes sense that we were trying to get rid of these 3 factions, because they either could destroy us all, become God, or find Protectors. On a macro level, the story makes sense. Find Protectors, defeat enemies, send them back home. It's the micro level that doesn't work. Characters being ejected out of the story because, well, reasons. Characters having random information to move the plot forward even though it doesn't fit their profile, and then suddenly not having more of the similar information because, well, reasons. And then the absolute disconnect between the 3 campaigns. In fact, it's such a big disconnect that I had to withhold information from you because that information wasn't important at the time. After the first campaign, there is a cutscene that shows the broken planet from the past with a giant local. Apparently, this guy's important. After the second campaign, the cutscene shows us the same guy talking about getting help from the future and yada yada. And after the third campaign, a cutscene plays showing us a bigger sword lighting up and a dude stepping through, cutting to the other side. As you know, we got rid of the enemies and the protectors found the location of the legacy. Not the warp gate and not the knowledge. The legacy. So for this thing, we have 3 names, and even though the protectors were made to protect the knowledge and should at least know what it is in the knowledge, they don't know what it is. It's just the legacy. So we arrive the biggest sword from the past and leave the protectors there so they can do whatever. I mentioned that the voice acting is pretty good in general, and the cutscenes are also well done. Of course there's a jank here and there, but it can make me happy with the minimal. This cutscene, at least the protectors part of it, compared to the others, is bad. I can't pinpoint it, but the protectors seem to be screaming with their inside voice. It just doesn't sound good. Anyways, after finishing the ritual, the protectors die, because the legacy was more of a monkey's paw thing, and the big dude from the other cutscene that played after every campaign, and then once again at the end, steps out. Tells Harik he was betrayed by his own people, even though that's not true, and tells Harik that he wants to be God Emperor of the universe. Harik, being a punk-ass babe, says, "Nah dog, you suck, I'm out of here." The big dude tries to yeet Harik, but my brother Cortez got his back, and the game ends with
a worthy adversary. Good. Good.
wow. After all of this, the game just looks into your face and says, "Ha! You thought this game would end on a conclusion? Guess again, sucker!" So, on top of the story being disconnected, characters being yeeted out of the story, for some reason, Deus Ex Machinas everywhere, and conveniences appearing everywhere, the game has the fucking guts to end on a cliffhanger. Holy fuck. You know, I want to be angry. I really want to be angry, and this game makes me angry sometimes. But I can't. Because the story wasn't consistent enough for me to care. Like I said, the protectors vanished from the story, and then out of the blue came to finish the story off. They get killed, but we're not invested in them. We haven't spent any time with them. We don't know any of them. If any of the main raiders would have died, that would have been another story. But the protectors? I don't think anyone cares about those guys. And what about this big dude? Yeah, sure, we see a bit of the story after every campaign, but we know basically nothing about this dude. The first time I saw the cutscene, I was super confused. I'm like, what's going on here? What is this? What is this? I don't understand. What is this? What is this? What I'm watching right now? This feels very rushed, especially since they use the in-between mission expose device of having comms in the cutscene. That way you don't need to animate characters talking or walking. I get that more characters you have, the more you have to pay for VO, and the more you have to spend animating them, but it's your last cutscene. Your last cutscene that ends on a cliffhanger. Your last cutscene that ends on a cliffhanger, and you want to use this cheap-ass device to end the scene. What the fuck? To a certain extent, I get it. But if you plan to yeet characters out of the story anyway, then remove them from the story completely and try to justify with the available raiders. And if you want to keep the story beats, then try something like dialogue, you know, where it's mentioned that Shay has provided some information, or Loaf is distracting someone so that the mission is easier, or that Iona will keep the spoils of the mission, or something, anything in the dialogue that points that those characters still exist. After those characters have fulfilled their role in the story, they just vanish in thin air. I just want to say, I don't like the story, and especially not the ending. I generally like the idea of comics and hidden lore, but most lore in this game is fluff, and most of the comics are only about the main character. Now, with that all of the way, quickfire round. This game is pay to win. You can buy coins, which you can use to upgrade weapons, which gives you an advantage. Yes, you can unlock all the weapons with time, but it is the developers that created a grind, and they are selling you the solution for it. It is by definition pay to win. I already mentioned cards and weapons, so we should get into that as well. Cards can provide advantages like more damage or shorter cooldown on your ability. They take time and money playing back into the hands of pay to win. Weapons can be bought and upgraded again with money, and again playing back into the pay to win aspects, even though you have to have a hard forge upgrade, which again goes back to the grind, which you need experience, which you also can buy with money, or actually can only buy boosts. It's play to win. Even though it appears that the cards and weapon system is done that way so that players have a lot of choices, they don't really, since some cards and weapons are clearly more powerful than others, and in the old system cards were given out randomly. Also, most of the upgrades only benefit raiders and actively piss off Antags. As you might have noticed, this is a co-op game, and as a co-op game you would have expected that the game focuses on working together. There's only one small problem. As I mentioned 20 hours ago, there's a post-game screen that values you on a scale from 1 to 10. Guess what the biggest influence on your score is? Kills! Enemy kills and Antag kills. There are no points for elephant fuse, no points for finishing up objectives, no points for surviving with all 16 lives, no points for most amount of damage dealt to bosses, no support kills, nothing. There is no real incentive to work together. Instead, the games give you the most amount of points just by killing. That's it. When you play those missions alone, you can also notice that the game doesn't warrant any co-op gameplay. You can basically breeze through those missions. Yeah, sure, once your MMR goes up, it helps to have 3 more damage sources, but that's what the co-op players are. Damage sources. It doesn't help that there isn't the text chat or voice chat either, or any way to communicate. You have this simplistic wheel of communication, and it works for the most time, since the game is not overly complex. But, you know, it would be nice to be able to talk to each other and say more than, I'm going to A, defend B, suck my dick. As I already mentioned, the majority of the maps are not at all balanced towards the Antag. Mission objectives sit often near, on top of spawn points. Boss arena sometimes works towards the Antag, but it's most likely coincidental and not intended. For a little bit of a perspective, out of 60 maps, I feel 2.5 maps are actually balanced. All the other maps are either completely balanced towards the raiders or accidentally balanced towards the Antag, like the fight against Schneider. I might be wrong, but holy fucking melly telly. That's not a good look. Also, most raiders are not available for antagging. You can antag with every raider, but it seems that Harek works on almost every map. And Mika seems to be the second best, but those are more like personal choices. What is not a personal choice is the intelligence of ads. They don't do anything at all low MMR, and at high MMR they do occasionally something, and at legendary MMR like 60, they're just unfair. There is, except for 2 references, nothing that hints towards the existence of the Antag, and the 2 bits of information that we get from the story seems to be referencing each other, even though they come one after the other. It's weird, maybe it's just the cutscenes change, I don't know. Anyways, the Antag is not an integrated part into the story or into the game, actually. There are also no cutscenes for the Antag winning a mission. You just have the normal cutscene when, you know, the raiders fail. But for the final nail in the coffin, I wanted to listen to a specific line in the Who is the Antagonist video from 2017.
Paramos esto contra siempre.
If we are always playing against the CPU, this game wouldn't have much replay value. Having to beat a creative enemy who will challenge you in a different way each time you defeat him, using a variety of characters and different strategies each time you play, means a great challenge for you and your squad that you'll have to adapt to.
Crear un reto nuevo para tu equipo, ¿no? Y a tener que adaptarte.
The game doesn't have much replay value, to be honest. There's a reason daily quests and the monthly rewards exist. The antagonists are the lifeblood of this game. Without them, there's no challenge in the missions. It's clear to everyone that plays this game for more than 5 fucking seconds, okay? The antagonist is what makes the mission interesting. And yet, almost every single mission and every single play system is inherently weighted towards the raiders. You know how this looks? It looks like someone made a co-op game and then realized that the story wasn't that great, the gameplay was a little bit repetitive, and someone said, what if we changed our awful AI against one real player and the antagonist as a player was born? The antagonist concept already existed with Urus Beharit, and bada bing bada bong, we now have something that might keep people playing. Problem is, someone forgot to develop the role of the antagonist beyond the initial idea. Like I mentioned before, the Antag is always at a disadvantage. There is no way for smart raiders to fall for an Antag shenanigans. The ads don't do anything at low MMR and are unfair at high MMR. Most bosses are completely useless, and most maps are not made with 1v4 gameplay in mind. Greetings from Spawn Camp City, by the way. On top of all of that, there's not a single advantage that comes from playing the Antag. Antags don't get double speed, or double health, or double max size, nothing. It's just a plain character from the co-op campaign slotted into the Antag role without any changes. Like I said, it looks like someone made a co-op game and then realized the story wasn't that great, the gameplay was a little bit repetitive, and someone just added an asymmetric player into the mix for shits and giggles. When this game was in early access, still, I said, the antagonist system is inherently flawed, the spawn system sucks, not a single map is balanced towards the Antag, and the Antag has no inherent advantage. People promptly told me off and said that this game was in early access and everything would change and the mastermind thing would come along. We're now in the mid of 2020 and absolutely nothing has changed. Actually, it has changed for the worst. They changed the spawning system for sure, and they gave us a command wheel, but other than that, nothing really happened. Objectives are still on top of spawn areas, there are still stretches where it's literally 1v4, most maps don't force raiders apart, most maps are too small and prone to spawn camping, and the list goes on. If you want to hear me talk about the shortcomings of the antagonist, just jump into single missions. I just want to say, I told you, just because a game is in early access doesn't mean that it can be inherently flawed, and now look at the Antag. Haha, fuck you all. So, where do we go from here? We have a decent third-person shooter with unique characters, unique abilities. The lore and world is great, but there's some things missing, and the story kind of sucks. The vast majority of the maps are balanced towards the raiders only. There are the odd maps that are balanced towards the Antag, but they're most likely coincidentally balanced towards the Antag. The unique melee combat has been defanged since there is no fatal grapple anymore. There is no advantage like double life, double speed, or double max size for the Antag, giving the Antag no inherent advantage, and only disadvantages. On top of all of that, there is no character specifically made to play 1v4. The moment 2 or more players focus on you, the chance of you dying increases exponentially because you're playing a base character with absolutely no advantage against 4 other players. Yes, if you play 1000 hours, you'll probably be able to play 1v4 easy, but you have to think about people that are starting to play the game right now. There is a giant roadblock for beginner Antags that I assume most people will just not go. So here are the short-term things that need to change. The story and the lore. Tell us what characters did before the raiders, how they found the raiders, why they joined the raiders, and why they stayed with the raiders. Rate the gameplay. Change our playing circular maps and corridor map. Make the game more challenging in general and not only at high MMR. Make the bosses more lethal. Emphasize the co-op gameplay by having 2 active objectives on every map so the raiders have to split up. Give points for objectives, heals, assists, and damage dealt to bosses. And give less or no points for ads killed. Make a better tutorial for all the characters. Only Sasuke makes better tutorials than the official ones. In fact, just hire the guy and link his videos in the tutorial section. That would probably be enough. 3. Antag gameplay. Make an actual Antag, don't just plop in the playing character in a 1v4 map. Give the Antag an actual advantage or advantage options like double health, double map size, double speed, double anything, literally anything. Give the Antag actually command over the units like spawn time, spawn area, and complete ad control and target control. We already have that, but only over 2 normal units and only 3. I want complete control like an actual mastermind. You could even make those abilities. Long-term goals should be, of course, to balance out the Raider versus Antag gameplay, which is not right now. There is no balance. It's just Raiders. Raiders for the win. Stop. Finish the story and expand the lore. Keep introducing new Raiders. Which is, I don't expect to have more Raiders, but if you want to, that's fine. Coming back to the pay-to-win elements, it is clear that there are so many cards and weapons because they want to sell gold for people to skip the grind. Get rid of the grind. And get rid of build times and anything that is basically there to force you to buy currency. It sucks. Get rid of it. Keep the paid DLC and skin stuff and emotes, but get rid of everything that is pay to win. Also, don't shove the shop into my face when I open the game. It's literally scum tactics. Super long-term goals. Spacelords 2, Electric Boogaloo. This is not a joke. This should be the title of the game. Or add more missions, either free or paid, to the base game. In conclusion, it's a good game. There's a solid foundation, but the gameplay is not challenging enough. The unique 1+ bots versus 4 is something that needs more work. The Antag needs more advantages in general, since maps and enemies and bosses are not really effective at killing raiders. Bring Fatal Grapple back or do anything with the melee system that changes it up. The pay-to-win elements need to go. And finally, the marketing. This game is horny, so play into it. Give the people what they want. Food pics of Aneska. Just kidding. But honestly, tweeting once a day is not enough. I barely see anything about the game on Reddit or anywhere. The Steam forums are closed as far as I know, and I haven't seen an ad for this game anywhere. Unfortunately, games won't sell themselves. Marketing will. And now, after all of that, I am exhausted. Thank you for watching. My voice is slowly breaking. I recorded this during a stream. So go follow me on my stream. I do play Spacelords sometimes. Yeah. Also, since I'm an attention whore, like, comment, subscribe. Take care of yourselves. And stay home. And have a nice and wonderful day.